CEO. He has recently left Goldman Sachs.
I've known Tom since we were 15. I love him. He and I have built this company together.
Thank you, Khalil, for leading us here. The cash alone is a sum of money that I wouldn't know what to do with.
Hi, my name is TK and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Polygon, and welcome to Leaders of LinkedIn. So it's been a while since we've done a Leaders of LinkedIn video interview, but I'm really excited about the one we've got today. So essentially, if you've ever gone on Google and searched the words top 10 films for entrepreneurs to watch, because you're as much of a nerd as I am, you have probably seen on there startup.com, and it stars the gentleman who I'm going to be interviewing today, Mr. Tom Herman. And he's going to be sharing his tips, tricks for life, leadership, and business. Enjoy.
Hi, my name is Tom Herman. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I was the founder of GovWorks, an early employee at Jump TV, Uvu. I was co-founder at Dashbid, and most recently I was a co-founder at VBlock Solutions, which is a blockchain real estate company. And I was also one of the two characters in the movie Startup.com, which has provided me a lot of opportunities to speak to MBA and undergrad classes about entrepreneurship, which I enjoy. I guess I've always kind of been an entrepreneur. I grew up with parents who were entrepreneurial. My parents started a summer camp in 1961 called Windsor Mountain. Used to be called Interlaken, but was renamed. And I guess it's probably no surprise that through college I was kind of entrepreneurial with a bunch of different businesses that I started. Eventually, when I graduated from college, I was building rock climbing walls for schools and summer camps, and that was a fun entrepreneurial job as well. I was also, at that point, repairing computers for Apple, Apple IICs, Macs, and other computers and printers and scanners and peripherals and so forth. So I guess I grew up with it. But if there's a moment in time when I really became an entrepreneur, I'd say it was when I was working for a guy named Rick Fulop. He had a company called Arepa that was leasing software over the internet. It was very early in the mid-1990s for internet-related software as a service. I had a chance to start GovWorks at that point with Khalil, and when I went to Rick Fulop and said that I was thinking about going and starting a software company, he said, well, I'm sorry to see you go, but I understand if you have the entrepreneurial bug, and I'll leave you with one piece of advice. Make sure that you have a really solid employment contract when you start. If it's already in place, when you bring on investors, then it'll be easier to keep it in place. And he gave me a copy of his employment contract, which I frequently share with entrepreneurs when I speak at different schools and on different entrepreneurial forums. I'm happy to provide that to any of you as well. Just reach out and ask. But that's really when it happened. And in the years since, I've had a lot of employees who have left companies that I've started to go and start their own companies. There's a long list of entrepreneurs that I've been involved with, and I've always tried to encourage them and be as supportive as I can. So, who was Tom Herman in university? Well, I was, I guess, socially awkward. I was the lab assistant to the computer lab. I applied, one story that tells it pretty well is I applied for a job as a bartender at a local bar, and I was called back for the job only to be told, hey, you're not the guy from the football team. We must have made a mistake. We were looking for someone that was popular and could bring all of his friends to the bar to drink. They were desperate for someone that night, though, so they told me I could work on one day, and after I fixed a leaky toilet and left the bar, the cleanest it's ever been, at 2 a.m. in the morning, they said that I could keep the job, and so I did. That was a pretty good job for me. Who else was I in college? Well, I sang in the men's a cappella group. I was on the swim team. I built the first rock climbing wall at Bates College, and I taught rock climbing for the PE department. So, you know, I guess I was kind of well-rounded, even if I was a little socially awkward and a bit of a geek. So what would I go back and tell my 21-year-old self? At age 21, I was in college, and my entrepreneurial gig at that time was repairing scratched CDs and DVDs. I'd gotten some windshield scratch remover and somehow realized it took scratches out of CDs in 10 seconds with a quick wipe. And so I always had people bringing me stacks of scratched CDs, which I repaired for $1 a piece. If I could talk to myself then, I'd say two things. First, don't be lazy about math classes. They're hard, but they were mostly fun. I stopped after linear algebra and advanced statistics. Math really is the foundation for almost everything I've done professionally. Interpersonal skills are critical, but math is the differentiator in the marketplace for HR talent. So I would tell myself, don't be lazy about math. Don't quit the math classes. Keep doing them. The other thing that I'd say is that my quote-unquote Peace Corps experience, which ended up not actually being through the Peace Corps, should have been in Spanish or Chinese-speaking country, not in Jamaica. Language skills are so valuable and must be learned early, and I spent those early years working for the Jamaican government, and I didn't acquire those language skills that I think would have been really valuable. Lucky for me, I lived in France in high school, so I did learn French at an early age. But French probably isn't as useful for an entrepreneur or someone in business today as Spanish or Chinese, which is somewhat indicated by my experience working in Latin America in the travel industry, and now I live in Singapore, and clearly in Asia, if you're going to know a second language, then Mandarin is the most useful. I never had an opportunity to learn Mandarin, but I could have learned Spanish at a much earlier age, and it would have been locked in. So those are the two things that I would tell my 21-year-old self. Keep doing the math and keep doing language. They're critical. Interpersonal skills as well, but math and foreign languages. When I'm recruiting, what do I look for in a recent graduate? Well, I'm sure it comes as no surprise that I ask everyone what math classes they took and if they enjoyed them. If you never took a single math class, and in particular if you never took stats, that's not a good sign. Marketing staff with a psychology and math background are really great. I also look for people who can see beyond the specific task at hand. People who are curious and will stay late at work, not because they have more work to do, but because they've found another way to do something and they just want to learn more about it, or they don't want to give up working on whatever project they're on, and they just can't tear themselves away. I remember one of my first jobs as a software developer in Boston. I was building an early e-commerce system for analog devices. And we had built the first version, it was ready to launch, but I'd recently found a new software platform for e-commerce stores, and I wanted to try it. I was in the office until 2 or 3 in the morning for a week trying to implement this platform. At the end of the day, it worked, but we decided to go with what we had homebrewed. And that's an example of what I would look for in an employee. Someone who gets so engaged in whatever task they're doing, they find it so interesting and compelling that they just get stuck doing it because they don't want to stop. The only other time that I was really up at 2 or 3 in the morning was when I had computer programming assignments in college. I tried to go to bed early. My philosophy was if I had a test the next day, I'd always benefit more from getting a little extra sleep as opposed to studying a little bit more the night before. So really the only thing that kept me up late at night was a programming assignment. So, who is my biggest hero in business and why? Well, the easy answer here would be my parents. I've already spoken about them and their entrepreneurial tendencies, and I certainly learned a lot from both my mother and my father. I saw in them perseverance and passion. My dad was from start to finish a summer camp and experiential learning guy. It was in his blood. There was never anything else that he was going to do with his life other than educate children and run a summer camp. And my mom was a consummate operator. She brought all of the day-to-day skills that are needed to make a business run. One of the things that I tell entrepreneurs is early on, make sure that you bring in some sort of accountant, especially if that's not your thing, because being able to detangle the books a year after when you've been focused on your product and not looking at some of the nuts and bolts of running a business like basic accounting is always terrible. Well, my mom brought a lot of the basic blocking and tackling of business and operations that was a good fit for my dad. Success takes teamwork and complementary skill sets. So when you're picking your co-founders, try and look for someone that has skills that complement your own. And so that's how I would say I would talk about my biggest hero in business. But the other answer is, of course, the large cast of the usual suspects in high-tech success. Ellison, Gates, Jobs, Zuckerberg, whomever you want to talk about. They don't all have reputations as nice guys, but nonetheless, you got to have a lot of respect for people that build honest billion-dollar companies without much in the way of starting capital. Some people out there built big, maybe billion-dollar businesses, but their parents gave them all their starting money, and that makes it a hell of a lot easier. So those are some of the people that were in the right place at the right time, but I respect them greatly for having genuinely capitalized on being in the right place at the right time by working hard and being smart and having done the homework in advance so that when that opportunity presented itself, they could execute against it. I think Richard Branson said that you don't learn to walk by following the rules. You learn by doing and by falling and getting up and doing it again. Certainly as someone who's had a number of business failures, in fact, one particularly spectacular one in GovWorks, which was in the movie startup.com. I have to appreciate that perspective from Richard Branson. I also like the Jack Ma rags to riches story of a really nice guy, an English teacher, and someone who, by all accounts, is still a great boss. What they all have in common, though, including my parents and Bill Gates and Larry Ellison and Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Ma, they have an incredible perseverance and a passion and a drive for what they're doing. And they never give up, and that's important. That's an important trait. What book should every entrepreneur read and why? There's a long list of them. Currently, one of my favorite books is The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. It's hardly new, but I am so bought into the idea that an early stage startup is all about validated learning and determining product market fit that I think it's just a critical read. I also believe very deeply in the iterative approach to early stage startups. It's about getting a product out there, testing it in the marketplace, tweaking it, getting back out there, and that's so much more important, the learning that comes from that iterative process, than actually making money at the early stages. That the money making comes later on, once you've already determined that there's a real market for what you're doing. Finally, I'd like to say thank you to TK and the team of leaders at LinkedIn for offering me an opportunity to share my experiences with the LinkedIn community. I love talking about GovWorks and the movie startup.com and entrepreneurship with students. I speak regularly at schools like Fisher at OSU, and I welcome opportunities to discuss the lessons I've learned and observed in entrepreneurship over the last 20 years. You can contact me here on LinkedIn or at my email, tjherman16@gmail.com. Thanks again.
This is Jack. Jack doesn't have the Polygon Students app, and we think Jack is a prick. Jack is a person risking imminent catastrophe. His student accommodation search isn't going too well. He's very stressed out. We notice he's got at least 20 tabs open on his laptop, often losing track of his favourite properties. Dozens of unread emails from letting agents. He's likely to miss important viewings. He's under constant threat of having to live with a complete stranger if one of his mates bail on the house or drops out. This, on the other hand, is Chloe. She does have the Polygon Students app. She has things under control. She has the ability to view, save, and share hundreds of properties without ever needing to open a new tab. She can carefully custom her search to find exactly what she's looking for. She isn't worried if one of her friends bail. She knows she can easily find suitable housemates where similar interests are guaranteed. Don't be a prick. Be like Chloe. Download Polygon Students today.